This is North Carolina quarterback Drake Maye.
And he happened to lead all of college football in EPA as a sophomore in that air raid offense with Phil Longo. Last season, though, took a step back, only 78th percentile QBR, 48th percentile passing EPA, still 93rd percentile rushing EPA. The system around him was not very good. We had wide receiver, I think, play calling and offensive line issues. So you can kind of take this, you can see some plays where it was bad decision making, bad accuracy. You can also point to the good stuff, and you can kind of paint your own picture here. So I think that's going to be the difficult part for Drake Maye. But I think what I keep coming back to, he's only 21 and a half years old, and we're not drafting players based off of how they looked in college. We're trying to draft these players for what they're going to look like in 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now.
Lots to unpack there. This is going to be an awesome conversation. Just quickly, some numbers that matter. Drake Maye is 6'4", 223 pounds, over 9-inch hands. 2 years as a starter after sitting as a true freshman behind Sam Howell. He played the entire season, his third, at 21 years of age. And this year, 3,600 passing yards in 12 games, 33 total touchdowns compared to 9 interceptions. Hayden, where does he succeed? Because to me, it's kind of simple checking of boxes. He's big, he's athletic, and he has a live arm even when off balance and moving inside the pocket.
So some comps, I like the young version of Josh Allen. I think Deshaun Watson and Jordan Love are also kind of comparable. I think his number one trait and the one that's going to succeed and translate immediately is he is an excellent scrambler.
Yeah.
Number 1 and number 4 in first downs on scrambles in the last 2 years in college football. He had a 52% first down rate on his scrambles, which was the second best. So when he is deciding to scrambling, it's to work. He's not using this as a crutch. When he's scrambling, it is working. That's because he has size and speed and also the instincts to kind of take some hits as well.
Yeah, second in college football EPA with his scrambles last season. And it's funny because at the top of this draft or with other quarterbacks in the last few years, you see amazing athletes. I think because of that, Drake Maye's athleticism is almost being overlooked. His dad was a quarterback. His brothers were fantastic college basketball players. He probably has like sisters and cousins who are also amazing athletes, right. But you really do see it show up. And it's because Hayden, it's the environment that he played in. Like too often to me at North Carolina in 2023, there was nothing on paper in the progression of the offense. And so he had to create on his own with his athleticism. And he definitely has power and strength to work through arm tackles, which gains that extra 1 or 2 or 3 hidden yards to create that first down or get it to the end zone.
He's also going to be used in quarterback power, zone read, in tight situations, in the red zone, and short yardage. I think that you can get the quarterback designed stuff as well. In addition to just the scrambling, he also makes plays outside the pocket. There was this one play where he had to go to his left, and he just, with his left hand, kind of just grenade tosses it in for a touchdown. You're going to see those type of plays. He can throw the ball to his left and to his right on the run because he is so strong. Most quarterbacks, when they're running to their left, it's harder for them to throw across their body. Drake Maye can do all that stuff. And then in addition, his strength obviously translates. When you're talking about just his arm strength, we can get to the accuracy. I think that's a separate discussion, but he can throw the ball way down the field with plenty of loft. In tight spaces, he can throw the ball with plenty of velocity. So I think that he's not quite to the athletic ability of Josh Allen, but it's like directionally accurate. I think that Josh Allen just like a more physically gifted than Drake Maye, but we're not talking about that drastic of a player. And some of those crazy bad plays we saw with Josh Allen earlier in your career, you do see some of those on occasion for Drake Maye, but it really comes down to, we're talking about a very inexperienced quarterback, and you can see how in a couple years, this thing could look pretty sweet.
In full disclosure, I and Colt McCoy were able to sit down with Drake Maye at the Super Bowl and watch one of his games. It was against Syracuse, and see him go through his pre-snap and post-snap process. So again, I just want to put that on the table. You can all go watch it on Twitter if you want to. With that said, we got a keyhole into some things that other people might not. He does a great job to me of recognizing heat and blitz and pressure looks and shifts or drifts in the pocket or from his tight end to tackle or tackle to tackle accordingly. Like, again, he understands that, hey, if I have a free rusher on this side, I can buy an extra 0.25 seconds if I just slowly drift and take a big hit while I'm releasing. I've seen that viewed as a negative sometimes, his drifting and movement in the pocket. I see it as a positive. On top of, he was asked to call and make the protections at the line of scrimmage, something that doesn't often happen at the college level, and he is already doing it here at age 21.
I saw the good reps and I saw the bad reps. So I think it's kind of this discussion where you can paint it into either side. There's a corner blitz where he noticed it post snap and went over to the backside and, like you said, slid over there and made a nice pass. See those plays. But he also, I thought, took some bad sacks. In fact, according to PFF, 26% of the responsibility for the pressure fell on Drake Maye. That was 7th worst out of the 71 Power 5 quarterbacks last year. His EPA lost on sacks was also in the bottom 25th percentile among drafted quarterbacks. Now, a lot of that is offensive line, wide receiver, those type of things.
Can I bring up a number just to outline the environment that he's in? Last season, again, in 12 games, Drake Maye had 76 dropbacks on 3rd and 7+ situations. By comparison, Jayden Daniels, who might be his competition for the 2nd or 3rd or 4th overall picks, faced 3rd and 7+ on just 39 dropbacks. That was the lowest by any quarterback in college football last year, or I should say any quarterback in this draft class. Caleb Williams, JJ McCarthy were at 58. So again, that's an extra 18 dropbacks in situations on 3rd and 7+. And that's not even including 3rd and 11+ situations where, if you just want to put it simply, your offense lost yardage on 1st and 2nd down. It was worse than could possibly be. He had 36 of those. So at least 3 in 12 games. Like, that is, again, some of that's going to be his fault. And we'll get into those moments where maybe he wasn't as successful as he should have been on 1st and 2nd down. But it also speaks to the offense, his teammates, offensive line, wide receivers, so on and so forth. I would say that this is the worst situation of the quarterbacks that are being mentioned at the top of the draft.
Completely agree. I think people point to one of his wide receivers coming back and they think that he's like some like great wide receiver prospect. I've watched him. I think there's a chance he goes like 4th, 5th round here.
The bigger issue was Josh Downs leaving for the NFL and not having Josh Downs as like that comfort blanket from 2022 to 2023.
And even Josh Downs was a 3rd round pick. So like, it's like, we're talking about very bottom of the barrel type of environment. I think that some of these EPA and the sack stats that I'm bringing up, I think with more experience, he'll have a better understanding of when to get the ball out a little bit earlier. Like, he's not going to be in these really bad situations where he's trying to make a play out of nothing. So I think over time, when I'm trying to project forward, I see too many good reps of him navigating the pocket and making quick decisions where I think that he will become more consistent in that phase. And then all of a sudden you're talking about a great scrambler, a great athlete with plenty of arm strength. So I think that he has to improve a little bit on that, which is totally fine. 21 years old. And I think the second thing he has to improve on is, to me, it's the accuracy. And I've seen some fantastic throws, but I also see that he can spray the ball a little bit. And when I'm watching him in the pocket, even in clean pockets, I think he has a tendency to kind of click his feet together. He kind of bobs up and down in the pocket a little bit too much, which is he's trying to make a play, certainly. But I think over time, that's a very fixable issue. And I think that it wasn't even that bad. But I think you can kind of see it with like the Anthony Richardson stuff, with Josh Allen. I think these guys that are freak athletes that didn't have to rely about being in the pocket consistently, they can make some strides in that specific area. And I'm willing to make that bet. So I still, even with these negatives here, he's clearly my quarterback too. I don't have him with that like 1st overall grade. It's like one tier underneath that. I think he's actually very similar to Anthony Richardson as a prospect, which kind of goes back to the beginning part of the show. If you loved Anthony Richardson, you're going to love Drake Maye. If you hated Anthony Richardson, you're going to hate Drake Maye because they have a very similar profile. But to me, I want to bet on the traits and I want to bet on what these quarterbacks are going to look like in 2, 3, 4 years from now.
We're in a golden age of football content right now, especially on YouTube. And that comes with a lot of former NFL quarterbacks having their own channels or posting their own videos. I'm not going to bunch them all together or lump them all together, but it does seem like that in some ways they are lower on Drake Maye. If we're talking about the JT O'Sullivans, the Chris Sims, the Kurt Warners of the world, I can keep listing more. And I think it comes back to those mechanics issues, maybe the unfluid motion, the toe tapping, the stiff front leg. Look, I am not a NFL position coach at all. And I'm sure that a lot of those do lead to inaccuracies. But what I can highlight is that he just wrapped up his 2nd season starting in college football, right? The other quarterbacks, or many of the other quarterbacks in this draft class, we're talking about Michael Penix, starred for 5 years. We're talking about Jayden Daniels, played for 5 years. We're talking about Bo Nix, played for 5 years. If we just go and look back at the stats that those guys accumulated in, let's even say, their 1st or second season starting in college football, it's a no contest from what we talked about and saw from Drake Maye in his first 2 seasons starting college football versus what, again, the Daniels, the Bo Nixes, the Michael Penixes did really at the end of their career in their 5th year of starting. That is the big question here. Do you think that Drake Maye, with more playing experience, with more mental maturity, with more physical maturity, with more moments and opportunities of seeing different coverage looks or protection looks or pressure looks, is going to be able 3 seasons from now in playing, get to the point where inaccuracy issues don't pop up with the Bo Nixes or the Jane Daniels of the world? Are some of these things that, Drake Maye is doing right now, can you fix them like we have seen these other guys fix them? And again, that is probably the number one sticking point that people have in their evaluations here. And I'm on the side where I do believe with more playing time, with more coaching, with more experience, the checklist that we talked about at the top is going to round out and deform. And even if it doesn't, you basically have to, in my opinion, maybe have like Drake Maye turn into one of the least accurate passers in the NFL in order for him to fail, right? Because the tools and the traits might compensate for some of the other weaknesses that he does have in his game right now at 21 years of age.
I think my favorite comp for him right now is Jordan Love, who took some time to develop, was not the perfect prospect by any means, but had all of the traits that you're looking for. Maybe Drake Maye needs to sit for a month or two, get his feet kind of figure it out, and then all of a sudden let him go. A couple other stats that I came across for him. At least 10% of his passes were on digs or crossing routes over the middle of the field, which is actually a lot compared to like the college football average. He can throw the ball over the middle, which might mean that he's open to this Shanahan tree that we're talking about. That's particular, very high up in the draft. Maybe the Commanders, the Vikings. I think he'd be a fit in all those offenses. And then the other thing that's crazy here is only 4 of his touchdowns last year came on throws under 10 yards in the air. He didn't have any of the layup drills. Now, I think it's kind of twofold. Number one, he loves to send it deep because he's he's got great arm strength. So he wants to throw the ball down the field. But also, I do think that he needs to develop a little bit more because on these like timing routes, slants, in breaking routes, those type of things, he had the worst points earned of all the quarterbacks. Obviously, it goes back to the environment, but I think it just comes down to
and the structure.
Right. He just needs more time to develop. Yeah. And that's totally fine. So I think ultimately when you're talking about the other quarterback evaluators, they're worried about the accuracy and the footwork. To me, they're true. Those are.
We're not sitting here and saying that he doesn't spray passes wildly at times. He definitely does.
But it's fixable to me with time. And he's not going to win the Super Bowl in his first year, but I think that he has the traits to go be an NFL playoff type of quarterback in the top 10 discussion. Those guys are very hard to find. And ultimately, most Power 5 guys with the production that he had as a sophomore that are only 21 years old with his size and athletic ability, these guys are the types to go very high in the draft. So I think he's got a little bit of boom bust potential in his profile, but I think that he ultimately will get this thing figured out. So very bullish on Drake Maye in general.
Yeah. So one final point on that. What would he look like with 3 more years of playing college football? Would it be like Bo Nix, who went from 12 touchdowns and 7 interceptions to 45 touchdowns and 3 interceptions? Right. Would it be like Jane Daniels, who went from 10 touchdowns and 10 interceptions to 40 touchdowns and 4 interceptions? Mm-hmm. Like we're getting to see the best of the guys who played 5 years in college football. Yep. And obviously they had warts 2 years as a starter in college football. And we're seeing and have to highlight the warts of Drake Maye after 2 years of playing college football.
And that was in 2 different systems too. The offensive coordinator changed too. So he went from this air raid offense to an offense that to me lacked a lot of identity. So that was another problem.
Your point of, I think he does have, and the mechanic stuff does pop up when throwing to his left. But I even just look back at like the quarterbacks who failed in the first round in recent years. Like Kenny Pickett failed in the first round because he was mainly an out of structure quarterback in ways, and obviously was limited in a bunch of his traits and his tools. Zach Wilson had throwing highways at BYU. And once he got to the league and there were pressure and different looks when it comes to getting heat, he definitely could not handle that. Trey Lance, only a certain amount of dropbacks. Drake Maye has even more dropbacks on top of that. We can keep going on the list. Yep. Drake Maye isn't going to fail for the reasons that a lot of the first round picks have failed in recent years. All right. Did we cover it all? Hayden. I mean,
Yep.
this is a fascinating conversation. I could see Drake Maye being the quarterback 2 in this class.
Yes.
I could see him being the quarterback 4 in this class. And so if you are watching this during NFL draft weekend, you know the answers before we do. But most importantly, you need to hit that subscribe button. You need to leave a thumbs up. You need to watch all the other draft profiles that we have here on the channel. We go through all the quarterbacks, wide receivers, and running backs. So don't leave and check out the next video.